Chapter 3. My brother Paul and I were born 1 hour and 46 minutes apart. Paul came out first, much to my chagrin, and he never fails to bring it up when needling my nerves or making a really bad joke about time zones. Paul's 106-minute lead in the race of life has always been a way for us to elucidate our differences. When we were much younger, our parents would joke that our brand of fraternal twinness was a direct result of that gap. Every minute shaved off would have brought us closer to the identical end of the twin spectrum. But over the years, Paul and I grew to embrace the gap, a unique understanding that only we shared. For instance, when we're working on a story for APN, I'll subconsciously give Paul deadlines 2 hours earlier than required, knowing his snooze button will have mysteriously pushed itself that morning. Or when we're on location, Paul stows an extra Larabar in his recording kit when he has a feeling I'll get too into whatever I'm doing, forget to eat lunch, get irritated at him, and need a refuel before dinner. You might chalk all this behavior up to habit, but we call it twin-tuition. And while this sibling phenomenon is usually activated in mundane ways day to day, occasionally it's triggered as a sign of something far more ominous.
You have one new voicemail from
Dr. Henry Edwards.
On our third day in Connor Creek, Paul and I got into a fight and ended up going our separate ways for the rest of the evening.
Hello, this is Dr. Henry Edwards. Did I need to say my name? I already said it after the first beep. I don't really know how this was. That wasn't...
We couldn't agree on which lead to follow. A typical argument between producers, but intensified because those producers are also related.
I don't believe we've met yet. Sheriff Madison told me you arrived the night her brother died. I dropped by the Dead Canary earlier that day, but lost track of time. You know how these...
2 hours after splitting up with Paul, I was reviewing the day's tape back in our room when that familiar feeling suddenly dropped like a pit in my stomach. It was my twin-tuition, alerting me of trouble. And seconds later, I received the worst voicemail of my life.
Anyways, I'm calling because there's been an accident.
From the American Podcasting Network, this is the Wayward Guide for the Untrained Eye. I'm your host, Artemis Schue-Horyn, and at this point, you probably have a lot of questions. How did we get here? What happened that third day in Connor Creek? And who was behind Paul's accident?
Or rather, what was behind it? Spoiler alert, I survived. Me, Paul, your unapologetic co-host.
Come on. Haven't you heard of dramatic tension?
What? I've been doing half the narration on the podcast so far. I obviously didn't die before post-production. Besides, you know the old adage, life is about the journey, not the destination.
Then let's head back to the earlier days of this particular journey and take a closer look at a key player, Minor Mole.
Honestly, fantastic name. We stan a clever animal pun.
On last week's episode, we interviewed the locals of Connor Creek, and it seemed like everyone had Minor Mole on the mind. They just couldn't agree on how they felt about it.
It was a touchy subject, like the final season of Game of Thrones, the final episode of Lost, or the final shot of Inception. Folks either love it or hate it.
But Minor Mole deserves its day in court, and you can't have a fair trial without defending witnesses. Enter the Irons family.
Is it on? Are you going?
She's pointing the thing at your mouth, Cliff. Of course she's going.
The light's on, Dad. Don't act like you ain't seen a Walkman before.
Oh, we use a digital recorder now.
If she wants to call it a Walkman, she's gonna call it a Walkman. Who does this city boy think he is? Really? Tomato? Okay, now I gotta start over. Yes, Minor Mole has really changed my family's life for the better.
Cliff, his wife Rocky, and their daughter Jewel are 3 key employees at Minor Mole's Connor Creek branch.
Real brassy, stone-cold, blue-collar folk. The kind of people that make you think, what if our names literally defined us?
Mining is all we know, really. It's in our blood. My parents were miners. Cliff's parents were miners.
Yeah, my parents were also miners.
Yes, sweetie, we are minors. Not were. Were would imply that we are deceased, but we are very much alive. Remember what we talked about with the present and past tense?
Before you hotshot coastal elites make fun, we had to pull her out of school this year, okay? She's making up.
Yeah, no, I get it. I had to repeat the 4th grade back in the day.
Yeah, same. I was on my 5th attempt when my parents said I needed to get a job.
Oh, we didn't realize that the town was under so much economic strain.
Well, you'd think that in a mining town, they wouldn't let the mining business fail, right?
Well, I suppose.
Wrong! Our previous town council left us out to dry. Only allowed enough mining to make gift shop tchotchkes. A disgrace.
Rocky went on to describe,
At great length, I might add,
the hardships that her family suffered before Minor Mole arrived in town. With tourism falling past rock bottom, Cliff was forced to sell his Iron's heirloom hand tools in order to put bread on the table. Rocky attempted to start a tutoring business, but the only client she could attract was her daughter, who couldn't afford it. And Jewel abandoned her schooling to get an internship at the local marionette theater.
I quit on my 2nd day because the little string people haunted my dreams. And yes, I still wake up screaming.
Oof, murder puppet nightmares? No child deserves that life.
But the day I heard an ad saying Minor Mole was hiring, it was the best day of my life.
Honey, over our wedding day?
Oh, when I learned to tie my own shoes last week?
The ad Cliff is referring to ran last summer on the Connor Creek radio a total of 350 times before, after, and during Barney Fletcher's daily talk show, Local Yokel, No Jokel. We managed to get a hold of a clip from his archives.
Hey, Connor Creek, do you feel like you've been left behind? Like you're not good enough? Like these days there's not enough good to go around? Well, my name is Silas Torsen, the regional manager of Minor Mole here in Connor Creek, and I'm here to fix all that. You see, I was born in a small town, and I can breathe in a small town, just like this one. So I understand the importance of family and tradition. I'll be hosting a job fair at your town council meeting next month, and I'd love to answer all your questions, hear your concerns, and most importantly, shake your hand. And maybe after all that, I can convince you to join our little family. Because at Minor Mole, what we dig most is you.
Even for me, that last line was a little much.
Still, it landed. The disenfranchised of Connor Creek took the bait.
Silas just really gets us, you know? He understands family. You can't fake that.
Cliff was so inspired that he drafted a city ordinance to lift child labor restrictions so our whole family could work full-time for him right away.
A full-time job with no spooky puppets is the best birthday present I ever got.
The thing about working for Minor Mole is...
They dig us.
It only took a few saccharine sentiments and an echo chamber of buzzwords for Silas Torsen to find his disciples and set up shop. How could the Irons family believe that this large corporation actually had their best interests at heart?
Now, as the hosts of Wayward Guide, sniffing out swindlers and unmasking false prophets is our oeuvre. Am I using that correctly? Let's cut that in post. So before sitting down with Silas personally, we did our homework.
Well, I did our homework.
And I peer-reviewed.
Let's start with Minor Mole's parent company, Chimera Worldwide, originally a silicon processing company that was essential in ushering in computer technology to Central Europe in the 1960s.
Even today, it's very likely that essential components in your computer, tablet, and phone feature Chimera's technology. With that level of universality, it begs the question, do they know all our secrets?
But that's a different story for a different season of probably a different podcast. Over the last 60 years, Chimera and their subsidiaries have expanded in dozens of fields beyond tech, including agriculture, shipping, e-commerce, broadcast news, and energy.
No wonder their corporate slogan is, Chimera, a little bit of everything.
But following a global push for clean energy, their fossil fuel divisions suffered. They were heading towards bankruptcy in nearly a fifth of their portfolio and needed fresh, profitable ideas. That's when Silas Torsen moseyed onto the scene.
And now to Jacobson with today's financial news. The Dow Jones is reporting a 300-point climb for Chimera worldwide after naming Silas Torsen the president of domestic sales for their subsidiary Minor Mole Incorporated. Son of Tennessee oil tycoon Orville Torson, Silas has previously parlayed his inheritance into a number of successful business ventures, including the popular regional Pilates franchise Torson's Torso and Bolo necktie subscription service Stylus.
Remember in the radio ad when Silas said he grew up in a small town like Connor Creek? Well, I'm not sure many would consider the ritzy suburbs of Nashville to be comparable.
He wasn't lying about the importance of family, though. He'd be nowhere without nepotism.
Silas had the get-rich-quick spirit that Minor Mole needed. Not long after his appointment, he kicked off All American, All Mine, a domestic initiative that targeted rural communities. The idea? Inject resources and commerce into areas of the country with mid-sized mining infrastructure that were byproducts of the 19th century mining boom.
And make boatloads of money exploiting low-income communities by monopolizing their primary resource. That was also the idea. But for trust fund bros like Silas, life finds a way.
We're back with Stock Jock Radio.
What did I tell you folks from day one about Minor Mole? Do not buy. Stay away. It seems like the higher-ups there really fracked up. You get it? Expense reports from the company's most recent federal audit have leaked, and it looks like Silas Torsen is getting the shaft. According to these leaked documents, Torson spent upwards of $300,000 in quarter one on personal expenses. You can't do that, folks. Toothpaste is not that expensive, unless you're, I don't know, into teeth whitening. And $85K for Western footwear, that's a lot of boots. And $150,000 paid to recording artist Lil Nas X to perform at his birthday party. Now, I like Lil Nas X, but he shouldn't be doing birthday parties for a CEO with a boot problem. The official statement from Minor Mole is as follows. Help, we are sinking, bail us out. Government, bail us out.
I want to say I'm not surprised. Then again, I took Silas for a Pitbull fan.
But Silas wasn't entirely booted from the company.
No, he suffered a fate far worse. Excommunication from his bougie corporate life and a demotion to regional manager of one of his project's remote locations, Connor Creek.
Like Paul and I, Silas was a fish out of water in Connor Creek, and he was gasping for air. All of this might explain why my first interview with him went south almost immediately.
Yeah, all that. And your unbridled accusations.
You know what? I think this meeting's over.
I'm just stating the facts. A man is dead. A man running for a swing seat on the town council. And a man who was actively fighting against your company. That's gotta add up to something, doesn't it?
The business I'm bringing this town is gonna make a whole lot of folks happy. And that little First Amendment poster boy wanted to stop it. You think I'm the only enemy he made during this little crusade? Well, I check your math, lady host.
You can drop the faux concern, Silas. I've been doing this long enough to know that the only arithmetic you're interested in is the multiplication of your profits and the division of their community.
Wow, I can't believe I missed this. I didn't realize you were so skilled in the art of pun-upmanship, Artie.
Well, the guy was a tool.
And you nailed him. Am I right?
Oh, okay. Let me spell it out for you. This town is dying, and the people need me to survive.
Well, some would say they're dying because of you.
No one said that. No, so you're using those fake news tricks to try and twist my words. And I would know. I won Twitter fights with TMZ over this very issue.
All my brother and I are trying to figure out is what you get out of all this.
A one-way ticket back to civilization is what I get. After I'm through here, there's no way the big wigs at Minor Mole don't promote me again. I'm pouring a lot of resources into Connor Creek, you understand? And it's working. This entire town is under my silver spell. We gotta do big things to make even bigger news.
When he said a lot of resources, he wasn't exaggerating. On his desk was a note regarding a large payment, $122,123 to TFCC. What did TFCC stand for, and why was he sending them a six-figure sum?
Could it have been the Torson Fracking Compressor Corporation, embezzling money to invest in his father's pipeline venture and destroying the environment through fracking? Well, that's a Torson 2 for 1.
Or maybe it stood for Travel Funds Credit Card. We all know Silas had a penchant for extraneous spending. Maybe he was racking up airline points with the Minor Mole MasterCard so he could splurge after skipping town.
And who was the mysterious we he said would do big things? Was he speaking on behalf of Minor Mole? Was he citing a silent partner in this nefarious scheme? Or was he just one of those pompous jerks who refers to himself as we?
Regardless, it was clear that this version of Silas Torsen and Minor Mole, the compassionate savior swooping in to save the little guy, was nothing more than a self-serving ruse.
And I don't think he was too happy that we saw through his bull.
Wait, are you still recording? Didn't I say that this conversation was over?
The appropriate phrase is off the record, and I need to agree to it. Now you know for next time.
Oh, I will. But not you, your brother, or your little radio player are going to get in the way of my resurgence. Oh, and off the record, you're going to regret doing that, Miss Schue-Horyn.
Next time on Wayward Guide.
Hey y'all, it's Ags Florentine, travel agent, brooch enthusiast, and keeper of the minutes for the Conner Creek Town Council.
Oh, you don't need to reintroduce yourself, Ags. You are unforgettable.
Well, all press is good press. I picked that nugget up after reading a review of Starlight Express. Now, the critics panned it, but it didn't stop this gal from catching a touring production in Reno back in '92. Now, did you know the actors in that show are supposed to be trains? What? I didn't catch that until my 4th viewing. But like the Andy Lord Webber and Richard Stilgoe masterpiece, you're in for a real treat today, Miss Schue-Horyn. Oh, duty calls.
Tin Can Brothers presents Wayward Guide for the Untrained Eye, starring
Mary-Kate Wiles
and
Steve Zaragoza.
Written and directed by Corey Lubowich, Joey Richter, and Brian Rosenthal. Featuring
Carlos Valdez,
Kurt Mega,
Whitney Avalon,
Ryan Simpkins,
Titus Macon,
Emily Darville,
Jamie Lynn Beatty,
Madison Cramig,
Jeff Blim,
Lauren Lopez,
and original theme music, sound design, and mixing by Ears Up Sound Design. Executive producers Corey Lubowich, Joey Richter, and Brian Rosenthal, Paul Komorowski, and Greg Gibbons and April Morris. Go beyond the podcast and watch new episodes of the Wayward Guide Companion Series on YouTube. Please rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information, visit waywardguideshow.com or follow Tin Can Bros on Instagram and Twitter.